I want to thank all the senators who are here this afternoon: Pangilinan, Mabini, Tyron, Duenas, Palacios, Gutherts, Cruz, Blas, and Toniera. Thank you very much. We have enough to proceed. So we are on bill number 365, and I recognize the author, Senator Gutherts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and colleagues, and good afternoon to everyone. Madam Speaker,
A motion?
I'd like to move this bill to the second reading for discussion, please.
And the third reading?
Under third reading for discussion.
You may proceed,
Thank you,
Senator.
Madam Speaker. Thank you. First of all, Madam Speaker, I want to acknowledge Senator Munya Barnes, Chair of the Committee with Oversight with respect to this bill, and for also co-sponsoring the bill along with me. Bill number 365-31 is an act to amend sections 40113B, 19, and 4013B of Chapter 40, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to placing the Tagachan Beach Park under the administrative authority of the Office of the Mayor of Jonia, and including fees charged for the use of public and beach parks under the purview of the respective mayors in the Municipal Planning Council Fund. This measure does two things, Madam Speaker. First, it places control of the Tagachan Beach Park under the purview of the Mayor of Jonia. There is already precedent of transferring administrative control of a beach park to the local mayor and municipal council. In the last term, the 30th Guam Legislature transferred administrative control of the Mariso Pier to the mayor of Mariso. Madam Speaker, in speaking with Mayor Pt.2, the mayor of Jonia, as well as constituents of the mayor in Jonia, it is well known that the area, which is the focus of this bill, Tagachan Beach, remains a popular recreation spot. However, it is in dire need of maintenance and regular upkeep. Perhaps with the mayor, as he has requested and the municipal council has requested, tasked with its upkeep, there might be renewed opportunities for rehabilitation in the area and to turn it into a true gem for Guam's eastern coast as the residents of Jonia take ownership and pride in the Tagachan Beach Park. The Department of Parks and Recreation is overwhelmed with their current responsibilities. And when you talk to them, particularly at public hearings and the hearing that was held for this particular bill, they claim they have no resources or manpower to regularly maintain this facility. And that is why the park is often unkept. The second matter Bill 365 addresses is the ability of the respective mayors on Guam to generate revenue within the village. This measure expands existing law that already allows revenue to be generated in individual villages through the Municipal Planning Council Revolving Fund. This bill will allow mayors to capture additional revenue from permit fees for the use of village parks and beach parks that are assigned and under their purview. This does not mean that mayors will charge fees in every case, but should they feel there's a need to do so, they should have the power to do so. Now the mayors have the authority to set charges for the use of community centers, gymnasiums, and all sports facilities which is deposited into their respective municipal planning council revolving fund. These funds currently are dedicated to the operation and maintenance of these facilities and to fund special projects identified by the municipal planning councils. Moreover, the same statute authorizes the Mayor's Council of Guam to set up a uniform fee structure in this bill for the use of village centers and equipment. And with this measure, parks and beach parks under the administrative authority of mayors will be included. So, aside from trying to find a way to assist the village of Jonia have more oversight over its own beach park, this bill sets up a potential revenue source that the mayors can tap into to help upkeep their villages. Now, this is really a paradigm shift in some ways, Madam Speaker. Again, it's not the first time this legislature has done this. We did this for the Mauricio Pier. It's under the purview of the Mayor Mauricio. And here we have a beach area that requires major, major work. And the mayor of the village and the village council and residents in the village have requested that their village be empowered with the authority to maintain and oversee this facility. The intent of the bill is not to disparage Parks and Recreation. God knows they do their best. But, as was explained to us by the park administrator from Parks and Recreation when we held a hearing on this bill, they don't have the resources or the manpower to maintain all the parks and all the villages and all the beach areas with recreational facilities under their purview. And here you have a village leadership that wants to do this. I think it is a good time to begin looking at decentralization in this government and to empower our villages, our village councils, and our village mayors and give them more authority over the resources within their communities. So I ask my colleagues to please join us in supporting this bill, Bill 365. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, are there any other speakers? Ben?
Nice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I listened, of course, to the author of this bill, and I applaud, of course, the reasoning behind making this this possible for the mayors, and she's right. There's incidences, of course, of other parks that have actually been turned over to the mayors, and I have always been a believer, too, is that when people take ownership of a facility, that they would take better care of the facility. What I'm concerned about, of course, and I was trying to read what the Director of Parks and Rec had to say, because normally when you turn some of these responsibilities away, very similar to what we did, Mr. Speaker, when we took then the monies that we would give out to the contractor to go out and maintain all of our schools. We took those monies then and then gave them now to the mayors, because we gave the mayors these additional responsibilities for the grounds. And so my concern now here would be the exact same thing. By removing now this one part from Parks and Rec, and you know very well as the budget chair, is that will there then be later, or would it be even this year, possibly a bill to de-appropriate, to correspondingly de-appropriate then from Parks and Rec now, when they factored in the total cost of their budget based on their responsibilities throughout the islands. And so the question that I have for the author, oh, thank you very much. Maybe I can ask the question to see if, oh no, I'm sorry, both of you, of course the chair and you as the author, is that what will the case be, and will the, or has the Director of Parks and Rec discussed the concern then that by passing this responsibility over, does he feel that then it would mean a reduction? And does he realize that even for the next fiscal year, if not this year, that there is that strong possibility then, because as we delete some of his responsibilities, areas of responsibilities, then that means, of course, there would be a need for less, of a budget to continue to maintain those areas and then transfer them to the mayor's office.
Senator Guthers, will you yield to that question?
I think that's a tremendous idea, Mr. Speaker. And yes, it only makes sense. If this responsibility now is going to go to the mayor, if this responsibility will now go to the mayor and to the village council, Mr. Speaker, then I believe.
Excuse me.
I have a point of information,
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, if I may. Based on the way the breakdown of the budget of the Department of Parks and Recs, they have a breakdown, not funding per park that is being paid into the agency. Their mission and their mandate, based on the Parks and Recreation and the programs and the divisions that they work with, is categorized in Parks, Recreation, and it's a big lump sum that this August body does. And just because one park is being taken away and given to another agency, that wasn't the request of the mayor. Now, of course, he would want the funding if it was done that way, and of course that they'll probably work the prorated thing, but that wasn't the request at this time. And I think it's important that as we do that, there are over 70 parks and there are over 20 recreational programs that the Department of Parks and Recs has, with the inclusion of the Guam Historic Preservation Office, with the sites, with the programmatic agreement and all that they oversee for the whole island of Guam, that makes the mission mandate of Parks and Recs exist today. So the question would be that if the money would transfer over, not at this time, based on the way the bill is written, and I wouldn't support that effort right now. I will, maybe I'm being biased because I've got oversight of the Department of Parks and Recs, but I also got oversight of the Mayor's Council and the mayors of the island of Guam. But I will tell you, it was the desire of this mayor and this municipal planning council, based on what was told to me, that they want it under their purview. They didn't ask for the funding, they asked for the authority. And I had some questions about that too that I'd probably bring up. But point of information, based on that, whether it's a good idea or not, I think it's important to know that that's not the way Department of Parks and Recs is divvied out.
Okay. Thank you very much. Senator Guthers?
Yes, I thank the retiring speaker for her clarification. I'm aware of that, Mr. Speaker, how the department is funded. But my point is that at some time in the future, it's not a bad idea. If the department is not going to be doing the maintenance of that particular park, then they may wish to help the village and the village council so they can do it.
All right.
But as was pointed out, Madam Speaker, the village mayor did not ask for any funds,
Okay.
nor did the village council.
All right.
Thank you.
very much. Madam Speaker?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for allowing then that question to be answered. And I asked that question because the last term we had done just that. We had actually introduced legislation and passed it by the legislature unanimously, and the previous governor vetoed it. And it was the position of the former director as well, is that was his fear, that then when we give one park or any facility in a village to the mayors, then more would want now to take on that responsibility, whether it's because it's in their village, they've been doing it already, or would like to be able to have better control of it in terms of the maintenance of it, and then at the same time, of course, generate, some monies when they are, reserved for the use of our community. And so that was, of course, the fear from both the previous administration and the previous director at the time. And this is important to know then the position of this legislature as well, is that if this is something we want, because I know the mayor had approached me again asking for the same thing to be done. And, we had to wait, of course, until this new administration is. And I'd like to wait to see as well how the governor is going to react to this bill, how he's going to act on it, whether it would then now be able to allow for other legislation similar to this to actually happen. I like to as well, though, however, is caution our colleagues as well, because there is a case that I am aware of where a request was made to be able to take care of a facility, but now they want to turn around to the legislature and say, now give me the appropriation so that I can maintain the facility. And that's what we need to be cautious of as well. Not that where I'm saying we're not totally against this idea, because I truly believe in empowering communities or organizations, because then truly it will be them who will be taking care of that facility, because they're taking ownership, they're proud of it, they want to be able to display it, they'll be able to use it. And it's a really good feeling all the way around that, it's something we can take pride in. So I'm not, of course, objecting to this at all. I understand, how everybody feels about it. I truly understand. And, the chairperson who is almost like caught in a rock and a hard place because she represents both, but I'm sure that she can be, like the lady in the court, be fair. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers on Bill 365? Senator Muñoz-Barnes.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of this bill. And I'd like to thank the good author from Manila or Barragata? Both. From the central area for giving me the opportunity to be a part of her co-sponsorship. And Madam Speaker, I just want to note for the record, as I spoke about and answered the inquiry that was posed this afternoon, it's kind of difficult when you're working with one government of Guam and trying to choose which agency or which entity would be better suited to handle what the mission mandate is for what truly needs to be. The village of Jonia truly wants to continue to showcase and be able to beautify, be able to look at other opportunities out there or tap into resources or public-private partnerships to be able to work closely with the village of Jonia to give them that feasibility. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a win-win. We've done it in the past. When I was in the 27th Guam Legislature, we worked positive legislation that would give public-private partnerships to the agency, plus working closely with the private industry so that we can tap into resources. We looked at tax credits. We looked at exemptions to that effect. And I think as we look at wanting to transfer over, we truly believe that there is a vision and that the village of Jonia has this beach park in their area. They're proud. There's history to that. They want to be able to renovate, refurbish, and beautify and upkeep this beach park. They want to be able to ascertain grant fundings. And Madam Speaker, this is where I'm kind of caught between that rock and the hard place, because right now, the park where it is today, and I need my colleagues to know for the record, I am the co-sponsor of this, is they want to be able to ascertain some kind of grants that are out there to to fix the park. but under the purview of the Department of Parks and Recs, they truly have that jurisdiction. The question that was posed to me was, if it was transferred to the mayor's office, will the mayor's office have that same ability to ascertain, as a government of Guam agency, ascertain any grant funding out there? And for me personally, I would think that because we're the same government, the same island, that would be a resounding yes. But I yield that question to either legal or to the author of the legislation to see, because that question was posed to me. Could they ascertain federal grants or any kind of receiving of resources out there if it were transferred to the village of Jonia, where the community and the Municipal Planning Council wants it to be under their purview?
So, is there anyone specifically you want?
Anybody?
Senator Guthers, do you yield to the question?
Speaker, you know, it's very interesting. That's a very good question, actually. But we have seen partnerships and grant writing, grant applications. We know that GUR applies for grants and then makes the grant monies available for police mini headquarters, fire stations, and other entities within the government of Guam. So there's nothing prohibiting Parks and Recreations for applying for federal grants for the purpose of refurbishing a beach park. It's one government. The way the entities are managed might be a little different, but we're one government. In addition, I believe there's nothing stopping any of our 19 villages through their mayors and their village councils, the municipal planning councils, for applying for federal grants either. So I think it would be a very harmonious effort and could happen in either case. Thank you. And this is based on my experience in grant writing and federal grant applications after doing this for 28 years at the University of Guam. Thank you.
Senator, was she able to answer your question?
Yes, she did, Madam Speaker, and I just wanted that question to be answered so that our listening audience could better understand what has been done in the past, what could happen today, and what could happen for our future. And I think it's important, as we are one government of Guam agency, that that there are templates in place already that can address the issue on hand. So, Madam Speaker, I just want to say I thank the author for giving the village of Jonia a park, a beach park that they have in their village for them to fall under their purview so that they can be able to maintain, beautify, refurbish, upkeep, and extend. And then another question, Madam Speaker, if I may, just one more thought, was it was posed to me, if the village of Jonia and the mayor were to oversee this park, would that mean if there were fees set up, would that mean that nobody else could go to the park and sit under a tree and put a blanket out and have a lunch there? Would we have to pay for that? And I said, just like in any other park that happens today, if you wanted to go to the beach, to Ipa Beach Park and walk the facility and then have your lunch bag and sit and lay out a picnic setup so that you can relax with company or with friends, that doesn't stop anybody from doing that. Now, if you wanted to rent the pavilion that's being refurbished or that's being fixed, and there's a set fee on that to have an event, to have a graduation, to have a party, to have anything, then of course you would have to follow the permitting process and what is needed to acquire a fee. So with that being said, Madam Speaker, I just want to know that that question was posed, and for me, I personally believe that anybody will still be able, and the village of Jonia will accept that, that they can still go in and visit the beach at any time. But if they wanted to rent the pavilion or the setup that's there, then they would have to go through the permitting agency.
I'm going to take a brief recess.
Thank you.
The legislature is back in session. Senator Guthers, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm sorry. We have a solution for the inquiries that were made and the expressions that were made. I'd like to make two motions in succession. First of all, to delete Section 2 in the bill, because we're going to add something else that will address the intent of Section 2. So I
Okay.
move to delete Section 2.
Okay, this is where we have to, on page 2 where it says on the top, number 1 says section 2, that's the section then we're going to delete. And then where it says the bottom on line 21 is section 2, that will be that will remain now correct as section 2.
That's fine.
You understand? Okay, so everybody understand that motion then she's making? On page 2, that lines 1 to 20 will be deleted. Okay, because she's going to make the amendment in the front that would then address exactly what she wanted to do here with the fees for the public and parks, beach parks. So on that motion, without any objections, so ordered. Senator, on your second motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. On my second motion, it's to amend Section 19 of Section 1 of the bill to read as follows. The Mayor of Joni is responsible for Bloss Park, Pangilinan Park, Quichocho Park, Violet Park, and the Jonia Community Park. The office of the mayor shall also have administrative authority of the Tagachan Beach Park and shall adopt the Department of Parks and Recreation rules and regulations and the fee schedule for the use of the park, any of its recreation shelters, or any activity within the premises of the park, and shall allocate a portion of the proceeds which shall be deposited subject to the provisions of Section 40135 of this chapter, received for such use for the maintenance and upkeep of the Tagachan Beach Park.
Does everybody understand? So it's really rather than going out to set the rules, but adopting the existing rules of DPW.
Right.
So yes, Parks and Rec, I'm sorry.
Right.
Parks and Rec. I wrote down DPR. Okay, so on that amendment, and please provide that to the clerks
Yes, I'll
as
make
well.
copies
So,
now, Madam Speaker.
No objections, so ordered. Thank you very much, Senator. Is there anything you'd like to say for closing?
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank you for assisting, and also for the good co-sponsor of the bill for assisting in this bill and the floor discussion and in making it a better bill. You know, Guam is going through a very unusual experience right now. It's a time of change. And in order for our island to establish a quality of life that we can all be comfortable with and enjoy, we have to be very flexible with public policies and be willing to make some changes in the way our government operates and the way we deliver services to our people. I am personally very much committed to decentralization of central power to the lowest level of government as much as possible. I think we should be doing it at the schools. We should be decentralizing from central control and decentralizing to the schools, where we empower the schools, empower the principals, empower the communities. And I also feel the same way about the villages. I think this is perhaps one of the first efforts that you will see from me, empowering the village mayors and the village municipal councils to really establish a local government system within our island. I think many of the mayors are ready for these challenges. I know that Mayor Jonia is very committed to this particular bill, and he assured me that he will never turn anyone away from Tagachan Beach, that all the people of Guam are welcome to come to Tagachan Beach, and that it is his goal and the goal of the people of Jonia and of the municipal council to make Tagachan Beach one of the best beach recreation areas on the island. And I think this action, if we support this bill, when we vote on the bill, if we're able to unify behind this bill, that we will enable the mayor and the municipal council of Jonia and the people of Jonia to do this. Thank you very, very much, Madam Speaker and colleagues.
You're welcome, Senator Guthrie. So on the motion then to send Bill 365 to the third reading file without any objections, so ordered. I'd like to now recognize Senator Palacios on the amended bill number 366.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that Bill 366 as amended in the committee be placed on the third reading file for purpose of discussion, and if I may make a brief presentation.
One moment. The bill that's
Bill, no, the color-coded
wait.
bill is for purpose of discussion, but actually,
so what we need for you to...
it's in the
there is-
folder.
There is an amended one that's...
it's the same.
It's the same?
It's the
Okay,
same,
that's
but the
what I want to-
color-coded is to facilitate the, I guess, the discussion and the
Okay,
the
I just
understanding
wanted to
of
make sure it's the
what
same
changes.
bill and not
The
a new one.
exact bill, Madam Speaker, I
Okay,
assure
so
you.
the motion then is to place it in third, and you would like to discuss it?
Yes, Madam Speaker, yes.
Yes, Senator, please
Madam
proceed.
Speaker, more than 3 years ago, in August 2008, through Public Law 29-109, this body authorized the judiciary of Guam to employ a magistrate through direct appointment by the Chief Justice, of course, with the unanimous approval of the Judicial Council. The appointment is subject to legislative consent. In this same statute, Madam Speaker, the Northern Court satellite was also established. Now, all this came about for two reasons. The first is to alleviate the workload of the trial judges by assigning to the magistrate uncomplicated cases such as small claims cases, traffic tickets, and return of warrants, and several other minor duties, which we would get into on page 4 and 5. The other reason is to enable the judiciary to be more efficient in the disposition of matters before the court by establishing the Northern Court satellite, thus providing a more convenient location in the most populated area of Guam, the northern Guam, northern area. In its first term, with little less than a year remaining, the Northern Court satellite, with its magistrate, has proven to be a success, and this, Madam Speaker, supported by records of accomplishment. With 3 years in its operation, the magistrate program yield data that support the adding of more duties for the magistrate, duties that are similar in nature and complexity with that of the current duties now being performed. Because the program is very successful, at the request of the judiciary through the Chief Justice and in collaboration with my office, I introduced Bill 366. Bill 366, Madam Speaker, proposes to authorize the Chief Justice to make one single direct appointment of an already sitting magistrate, of course with unanimous approval of the Judicial Council, without the requirement for legislative consent, which is, of course, essentially to give another term. In essence, Bill 366 proposes to authorize the Chief Justice to extend for one more term, which is a 4-year term per term, a sitting magistrate. Bill 366 also proposes that in the event that the sitting magistrate is not available to serve beyond the 4-year term, that the Chief Justice be authorized to extend the term up to 90 days pending confirmation of the next magistrate. This way, Madam Speaker, there would be no disruption in the services now being provided at the Northern Court satellite. Bill 366 also proposes to add additional duties to the magistrate's duties, duties that are similar in nature and complexity to those already being performed right now. And I pass out Bill 366 with color-coded, and I have it here with me. For ease of discussion and understanding, and you would notice that Bill 366 does not in any way alter the level and scope of authority of the magistrate, meaning that they can only hear cases similar to what they're doing right now with the levels of authority. Bill 366 simply authorizes the Chief Justice to assign other duties to the magistrate. Bill 366 does not impact on the compensation of the magistrate nor does it change in any way the current qualifications for appointment, confirmation process, and so forth. On page 4 and 5 of the bill, if you refer to the one I pass out, and if I may explain, the blue color, the blue highlights are the current ones, and the yellow highlights are the proposed addition. The strikeouts, Madam Speaker, is the result of restructuring more or less the sentences and regrouping it, I guess, to be more, and this is the contribution of the judiciary, but nothing in the current duties and responsibilities, nothing was deleted. So, for example, on the yellow ones, and these are the new ones, if I may just repeat, in addition to what they're doing now, preside over and render decision and judgment in small claims, it says may grant uncontested divorces in cases where there's an authorized consent on file. Another new ones that is considered for inclusion is enter judgment upon confession of judgment or default judgment in a civil case when a party alleges a sum certain is due. And again, on page 4, the third yellow highlights is take pleas, including accepting misdemeanor pleas, sentencing misdemeanors, and entering judgment accordingly. Nowhere in these changes, Madam Speaker, does it allow or authorize the magistrate, of course, to handle felony cases. And so all these yellow highlights are the new ones. And on page 5, the other new one is on line 17, serve as a settlement judge in a civil domestic case upon appointment by the presiding judge. The other provision that is new to this is on line 19, and that is the Chief Justice may reappoint a magistrate without confirmation by the legislature upon a unanimous recommendation of the Judicial Council for one additional term of 4 years, or at the minimum until a new magistrate is appointed and duly confirmed, but not to exceed 60 days, so that continuity of the service will remain. Again, Madam Speaker, this bill proposes to make the magistrate function more efficiently, and of course the court, and continue to provide the services. There are now actions that can be executed by the magistrate that would not in any way, of course, diminish or rather give him more authority or alter the compensation, but merely to give the the Chief Justice flexibility and authority in assigning cases that now routinely handled by the permanent judges who are actually serving a lifetime at the bench, subject, of course, to a vote of confidence every 7 years. And with this, if there's any question or issues that you see fit to be clarified, of course, I'm available to explain. But I would like to ask my colleague, of course, to please review the one that I hand out. There's no change from this bill to the one that was in the folder that's given out to you. But I took the time to highlight this so that you can see that nothing is taken out of the current duties, which are the blue highlights. The yellow highlights are the addition, the proposed addition. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Palacios. Any other senators wish to be recognized on the bill? Any other senators wish to be recognized on Bill 366? Senator Pangilinan. You're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't oppose expanding the jurisdiction, I guess, or the ability of the magistrate to hear the additional make these give him these additional powers. But for me, I kind of look at it when the court tells me that, oh, we're so successful with the magistrate that we're going to give him more work. That means doesn't have enough work now. I mean, this is a lot to pile on to him now. And they're saying, oh, we're so successful. It would seem like he's got more time on his hands. And so when you look at it, then what are the other judges? It's kind of like that debate we had with Parks and Rec. If we take the park and give it over to the mayor, what's Parks and Rec doing with the money for the that they were using to take care of that park? So if we take all of these motions and judgments and decisions now that are now confined to the judges and say we're going to put them over there at the magistrate, what are the judges going to do with their free time? Because they will have free time. Do we need to maybe decrease one judge on the bench because now we've got a magistrate that's doing all these? Or maybe we should just, I don't know. But that's the way I look at it. Not that, man, we're so successful with the magistrate that we can give him more work, because that means that they weren't successful, that they didn't need that magistrate because we need to find more work for him to do. So I think, but I do say that it makes sense that the magistrate should be able to do these things because these are matters that appear initially before him. And there's no reason why, and he has the capacity in both professional ability and an understanding of the law to be able to make these kind of judgments. So I don't see why he shouldn't be and couldn't do these things. But it's just the resources. If we now take this whole bunch of motions and judgments and cases that appear before the sitting judges and say, we're going to transfer this whole thing over to this guy, there is something, additional time made available there. So I didn't see the justification, I guess you might want to say, of the need then. Of maybe we didn't need that magistrate, that whatever the volume there could have been just easily spread out over the existing judges. I mean, I looked at some of the calendars, and you'll see the huge difference in the load between the different judges. Some have 4, some have 14 cases before them. So it's that allocation of resources that, to me, I didn't see here, that gives me a great sense of comfort because of the money involved. But again, I don't oppose expanding the ability of the magistrate to handle these additional matters that will be given to him. Because if he's not doing enough, then let's get him to do some more. And so I do stand in support of the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Any other senators wish to be heard on the bill? Seeing no hands, the sponsor is recognized to close. Senator Palacios.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it occurred to me when I was presenting this that perhaps the way it was said, of course, it might appear to imply that the magistrate does not have a full load in his hands. Maybe the presentation is that these are other duties that in the judgment of the court, these are other things that can appropriately be assigned to the magistrate. And I don't mean to say that he's not doing enough and that this can be added on, but that these are other duties that he can get into the mix and perhaps participate in the disposition of these cases. That's how I want it present. And in no way, of course, does it imply that he needs to be assigned this more to be a full load. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, very much. And I move that the Bill 366 be moved to the voting file.
On that motion, Thank you. The next bill on the agenda is Bill 384. Speaker Wanpat, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I make a motion that Bill 384, as substituted by the Committee on Education and Public Libraries, be placed on the third reading file, and I would like to just briefly discuss it.
Any objection? Hearing no objection.
Thank you,
proceed.
Mr. Speaker, again. Mr. Speaker, Bill 384 really is an act to extend the deadline to be able to submit for this foundation or anyone else interested in submitting petitions to establish F.Q. Sanchez School as an academy charter school. The charter school, of course, is in effect. It does have a timeline that would not make it possible for F.Q. Sanchez to be open for the next school year unless then there is a shortening of the timelines to be able to allow for a foundation is interested in actually opening the school up as a academy charter school. As you all know, the governor had transferred then not so much the property, but as caretaker, I guess, as the mayor had called it, transferred it to the mayor of Yamadak on December 7th, 2011 of this year. And there is a member of the community who's been actually working at the grassroots level with the community, has established the Humatak Community Foundation, Inc., and is engaged with the community to establish then that school as a community-based charter school. And according to the individual, and in this case, I'm sure we're all aware of, is Mr. Joe Kanata, has received overwhelming support from the community. And in their efforts, the foundation members as well and the advisors have actually gone out to the community and had surveyed the community. And since that time, I mean, I know it's a fairly small community, but they were able to get over 90 of the parents who have children in the community, and others also are part of the community, to respond to their survey in terms of taking over this facility and making it a community-based school, because their whole intent is that they would like to use the campus for a Chamorro, and this was their recommendation, for a Chamorro bilingual program, which encompasses the immersion program to address then the heritage language or a dual language based program. The site, of course, of the facility is very unique in the sense that when you say that the entire village, as small as it is can actually be the classroom for the school children. It also has the two very important environmental factors that is also unique, makes it very unique, is that you have the mountain side and you have the sea side, of course, enhancing even more what it is that this foundation would like to do with the school facility. In order then to move forward with this, hence then the introduction of this bill to be able then to fast track, so to speak, the process. The new amendment, because of what took place very recently, just this month, like I said, the transfer of it and the caretaking of the school facility then under the current mayor, and that's the reason why then Section 2 was actually added on, which means that the eligible applicant then shall now include a petition to the council, a memorandum of understanding, an MOU between the mayor and with the applicant, because it's important now to be able to do that, because there is another layer of of another layer of meaning of government, I suppose, that now has oversight of the building. But then as a result of that, of course, later on in discussing this with our colleagues earlier, and some were even asking specifically whether the transfer was made where the title and the land was actually transferred, and it was not. It still then is still in the inventory of the Department of Education, and that's where now the amendment would have to be made that I have provided all of you, and that would be in Section 2 then, that not only that there should be a memorandum of understanding between the mayor of Yamatic and the eligible applicant, but there should also be one between the Department of Education and the eligible applicant, because DOE still owns the property. It's still part of their inventory. When it opens, yes, as a charter school, but it's still a public charter school. So the Department of Education would still then, a memorandum of understanding would still have to be drawn up between them. The second amendment, when you look at the dollar amount, of course, that's set here, and I give, of course, credit to Senator Dennis Rodriguez for this particular section. But I had a conversation with the mayor this morning as well, and his concern is because right now, although he is the caretaker of that facility, it actually went through without any sort of funding, so to speak, to be able to maintain not just the facility currently, but more importantly is that when this whole process goes through, how then will they be able to prepare to get it ready for the opening of this school year, which is still part of this fiscal year. And so the amendment then that I would like to add on, that not just to operate it as an academy charter school, but actually would allow for the preparation then, whatever the preparations are for then the facility to be ready to open then as a school for the new school year. So I ask, of course, my colleagues for your support in this amendment. I think this, when this whole issue first started, of course, it was a very emotional issue. Members of our community who are not even residents of the Yamatic community actually came out in support of the community, wanting, of course, to keep the school open for their school children. The decision was made based on the number of students and the cost involved. But what this foundation is actually looking at now is not just a school with first to fifth graders or K to 5, but rather what they would like to do now is expand it even more, which will increase, of course, its school population by having a school of K then to 8th grade as well. Bringing in all their children. First priority will be the children of that particular community. Anybody else outside of that then can apply as well to be able to participate in that charter school. And just like all of our schools, of course, there are no fees to be able to enter this school facility. But like any public school, it needs to be able to draw from its own community, its own school district. That is why it should be with the children living in that village first, and then be able to open when there are space available, then to open it to anyone else in the community. So the goal is, and I know, like I said, the sentiment is to get the school open again. And I think that this is one opportunity. It will also, at the same time, support what this legislature has said many years ago when it made a decision that in order to protect and preserve not just the culture, the language, and the traditions through offering Chamorro language in our schools, offering, of course, and requiring that, and even for anyone to become a teacher to take the history of Guam. It promotes all that. This will also go much further because then now truly it'll be an immersion school that in which then, but it would also have that quote unquote hybrid of a dual type of program, so that then they would be able then to bring in the heritage language and the dual language based program. So with that, I ask and I hope that my colleagues will support this bill. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I note that there are 2 amendments, and maybe we should take it seriatim. On the amendment, any senator wish to be heard? Any senator wish to be heard on the First Amendment proffered by Speaker Wampat? Seeing and hearing no objection. Your Second Amendment, Madam Speaker.
And the Second Amendment is that the $100,000 that was appropriated in 3175, that it not only be used to operate the academy, but that also it be used, a portion of it be used to prepare then the school for its opening.
On this Second Amendment, Senator Rodriguez, you're recognized. Short recess.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for that opportunity to be able to meet, yes, with Senator Rodriguez and, of course, Speaker Pangilinan because of, the budget and all that. And where actually the monies came from, and these are proceeds from the sale of the bonds that for the Healthy Futures Fund. And that's tied, of course, to, whatever it is that would require maybe that some of these funds be used for specific things like programs rather than just facility per se. So, and because of that, and I don't want this to be held up as a result of how these funds are to be used, and keep it just then for to operate, the school. That for the Amendment B, I'm just going to go ahead and withdraw that amendment.
Seeing no objection to you withdrawing the amendment, thank you. Do you have any other amendments?
No, that's just the amendment. If no one's going to speak, then, okay, if somebody's going to speak, then I'll close.
Well, no. The First Amendment is approved without objection. The Second Amendment has been withdrawn. On the bill, on the main motion, Senator Rodriguez. Any other senators wish to be heard on this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't necessarily disagree with the charter school concept. I think it's a good concept. However, I still have some reservations on establishing FQ Sanchez as that charter school at this point. One of the reasons that the school was closed down was to save the government and DOE more specifically some funding, and I think that savings is something that I for one am very curious to know at the end of the school year what type of savings was truly realized in shutting down of this school. And I know in the charter school concept, the operations of a learning institution will be much less than it would be if it was run by DOE. However, there's still going to be some sort of funding requirements from the government to operate this charter school. And I'm trying to find the right and proper way to explain how I truly feel about this effort. This was a long, hard it was a long, hard effort to try to maintain the school as FQ Sanchez for that small village of Umatic, and ultimately that wasn't the case. And I know that the sentiments down there is kind of split. We have, of course, residents that are pushing for this charter school concept, but you also still have the residents there that want to see one day the possible return of FQ Sanchez Elementary School. And so Mr. Speaker, I'm going to continue to listen, to the debate on this and make my decision then. But just ask my colleagues as well to not forget why the school was closed in the first place. It was to the reason behind it was to save the government, to save DOE the money that we're saying we're having a hard time. We're having a hard time operating on. And so I just want to leave it at that. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Rodriguez. Any other senators wish to be heard? Senator Mabini, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in full support of Bill 38431, not only because I think it's a good concept, but I think it's quite timely. I understand the previous speaker's concern about why the school was first closed, and in order to save funding. But also, when this happened, it was quite clear that the community valued the operation and the existence of a school in such a small community. And we also know that the community recognizes itself as being a very highly recognized small community with a lot of natural resources. And I think this bill allows us to have the opportunity to kind of blend those two positive aspects, where they'd be able to take pride again in a school existing in the small community, not to mention have it set up in a way that can build upon its resources and assets. And at the public hearing which I attended for Bill 384, I understand that there is a group of individuals who are supporting this, and in their efforts, they had conducted a study of which I inquired about. And I understand that the community of Umatic has about maybe 100 or so family units, give or take. And but their study, according to those who conducted it, captured about 75 families of that group, which is a large number, who's in full support of this effort. And so that really made an impact on my decision. If they feel that this is something valuable, that they can take pride in as far as having a school, and having a school that will make such a big mark in our efforts to improve our school system or how we deliver education, I believe that 384 will help us make this mark. Let me mention also that as much as the terminology Academy Charter School is something that's being used, I think it also is evolving to this term that we educators call a magnet school. And this is an opportunity for students in other regions of Guam who's going to be interested in focusing their studies dealing with environmental studies or environmental issues. And so I think it would be a great opportunity for us to, again, be change agents and take this opportunity to capitalize on a community that has such great assets, a good community that really cares about their families and wants to have their children stay there. And can you imagine, we create a group of students who can become our future scientists who will preserve our natural resources, and it can begin in this city, in the beautiful village. So again, I rise in support of Bill 384-31, and I hope my colleagues will do the same. Sizos Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mabini. Any other senators wish to be heard? On the main motion, any senator wish to be heard? Hearing none, the main sponsor is recognized to close.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I understand, of course, the concerns of our colleagues in terms of the whole question surrounding this whole issue in terms of the closure of the school to be able to save some funding. And at the time, of course, I remember when I first came in years ago, we were looking at over 120 some students, and the numbers has dwindled down now to 54 students. And although the department found it difficult to be able to get all the funding sources that they would need to be able to operate all of the schools, I know they made that decision. There were some cases in which I remember the numbers actually even went far lower prior to the opening of the school, down to even 30 some students. And then in the hopes of trying to save the school, when talk started about the possibility of it being closed, some parents actually made the attempt to bring their children, withdrew them from the private schools, brought them back in to increase again the population. It went as high as 54, and then of course numbers were driving the decision in terms of the number of children and how much is it actually costing for a school per se to operate. Currently, even the department has actually done an assessment and are looking very seriously, yes, at all of their schools, and are looking at consolidation of some schools as well, because they're seeing that the numbers are are shifting out of the south, moving into central, and of course overcrowding in the north. And so there are, of course, talks again going on that I've got wind of, and I've cautioned them to make sure that, they try to work early on with the community whenever they're going to make any decisions to consolidate schools again or redistrict to be able to use the facilities to maximize full utilization of a facility or facilities that they have. So I understand and the concern, and that is why I think with this foundation they knew that would be a factor, and that's the reason why that if they did not have enough elementary children to be able to attend that school, then it will be expanded to include then the middle school, to have the older brothers and sisters of these elementary school age children to be able also to go to that same school. The thing about grants, and we saw this, and I didn't realize that was actually the case until the Guam Academy Charter School under the tutelage of Dr. Dwiggins found out that when in applying for grants, that one of the things that she was told is that she needed to make sure that she had a facility first, but that they could not they didn't have any money to go out and rent a facility, so they needed a facility or a school from DOE in order then to be able to access all of these other grant monies then to be used to operate the school for all their programs. And seeing that, of course, and then them not being able to get a facility, and then of course there's this whole question about the budget, it did not come to fruition. The foundation, of course, learning from what they've been through, and of course saw what has happened, needed to have a school facility to operate it as a school, or to renovate a facility to operate it as a school, in order then to access now all of the grants that they are currently applying for. My understanding as well is that even the Hurrah Academy had applied to also have a charter school and applied for a grant, but they were told too that the current facility that they have would not qualify as at the time for their purposes until they have a school facility that then they would be able to avail those grants, federal grants. So there's definitely lots of money out there for the charter school, and although that because this if the grant of course is approved and they open the school, then they can access more federal dollars, and it's not necessarily a dependent then on the local economy or the government of Guam to be able to get the money it needs. It could be matched, but my understanding is from the foundation is that already they have taken it upon themselves to look at grants, and they have many possibilities of getting those grants. And the individuals, of course, in the community who are supporting this are feeling empowered, and that they wanted to take it upon themselves to be able to do what they need to do in terms of physical labor to contribute to the school to make all this happen. The one thing that's also interesting, if I may also share with you, is that Mr. Fred Gofican is actually the grandson of F.Q. Sanchez himself, and the school that is named after, and he's one of the members of the foundation, and and he said that Yamadak has always been about the community, and they are designing this charter school that it should be community based, and that he said this whole concept, of course, of this immersion is to that it will educate future generations about their culture and their language, and that he himself is proud of being a Chamorro, and he's really happy that the school will be able to teach that, to continue it, to preserve it, because he feels that the language is dying. Another prominent individual as well in our community at the university, an educator, and also now currently lives in the community for over a decade, has testified also in support of it, and that this is Dr. Marilyn Salas, and that she's part of the board and also feels very strongly about the teaching and learning also of the language. And the one other person as well that's really critical to all this as well is Mr. Kanata, Joe Kanata, who's actually from the community in Umatic. He also heads the Guam Preservation Trust, and that was why he had made a recommendation to add in the bill, was because he feels that in his work that he does every day in the preservation of the culture, the language, the history, and all that, that is exactly what the focus then of this school will be. And that is going to be the first for Guam. And they want to make sure that it will be successful. And as Senator Mabini has mentioned, we can look forward to this school then actually being a magnet school. And the pride and joy that any one community would love to be able to go out there and say that their children have attended, or is a member of that school. Just it's a feeling that words just cannot describe. And so I'm just hoping that my colleagues will consider all that, and to be able then to support this, allow it to happen. I know that we always say this, that whatever has happened for whatever the reasons are, but I'm hoping that those reasons would not become an impediment for something that can become beneficial and for the community, not just for today, but more importantly for the future, for generations to come. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And my motion would be to, if I may, to send Bill 384 to the third reading file. Thank you.
On the motion to send Bill 384 to the voting file. No objection. We'll take a short recess.
I'm not doing.
The legislature is back in session. I recognize the minority leader for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move that we revert back to motions.
On that amendment, motion, no objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, also notwithstanding the House rules, I move that we bring Bills 323 and Bills 138 from the third reading back to the second reading.
On that motion, without any objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With regards to Bill 323-31, I want to move to also recognize, take it back to third reading, but there was also an amendment that needs to be made that was as a result of the previous action by the body for the body to reconsider that previous action to amend a portion of the bill that is basically not in is in conflict with currently the intent of the bill.
With the code, the
Right,
mandate.
with the code.
Which is the definition versus what is actually in the code.
That's right, ma'am.
Okay, so, and the chair is also aware of
So
that as well.
with that,
So the motion then?
30-second recess.
Okay, 30-second recess.
Right, 323. I just asked for 323. Yeah. Yeah, but I. Right. Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to move for the body to reconsider the actions of the body in an amendment that was previously discussed, proffered and discussed and approved by this body in Bill 323. And this basically amendment was found on page 5, line 4, with regards to the definition. And along those lines, ma'am, I'd like to move for the body to reconsider that action and to delete that amendment.
Okay, on the motion, does everybody understand? No objections? So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With that, Madam Speaker, I move
It goes down to,
move to place Bill 323 as amended back down to the third reading file.
on that motion without any objections, so ordered. I recognize, 323, the definition is to delete. Okay, we'll take a brief recess. The legislature is back in session. I recognize Speaker Pangilinan on a motion notwithstanding, motion for 138. No, it's you're going to move it out of third to second. Oh, he did already. Okay, so now then we're in second reading. Okay. Yes. So on Bill 138, I recognize then Speaker Pangilinan.
Thank you, Citizen Madam Speaker, I'd like to move that Bill 138 be placed in the third reading file, and I'd like to offer an amendment.
Okay, you may proceed with your
Thank you very
amendment.
much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, earlier Senator Ada made an amendment to Bill 138, the first sentence on Section 47032B to read, and that's contained in page. Hold on. Let me try to find the page, Madam Speaker. Page 11. It's on page 11, Madam Speaker, and it begins at line 4. And the amendment that Senator Ada had made to this section, subsection, Madam Speaker, read, applicants must be a U.S. citizen, and then it struck out or permanent resident alien who is a resident of Guam, and then added, however, in the event that demand by U.S. citizens have been satisfied, permanent resident aliens who are residents of Guam may be considered for the program. And we had some discussion with Senator Ada on the question of whether or not that may be precluded by other regulations or rules or even constitutional statutes. And so we came up with a compromise language, Madam Speaker. And so my amendment would be to strike out that Section B as amended and offer the amendment that you have before you. And that would read, applicants must be a United States citizen or permanent resident alien who is a resident of Guam. However, this is the additive language, unless advised otherwise by the Attorney General, Guam Housing Corporation shall satisfy demand by U.S. citizens before considering permanent resident aliens who are residents of Guam for the program. So it keeps intact the intent and provides us the opportunity to ensure that is doable and allowable under our current rules and regulations that may apply to the Guam Housing Corporation and the government of Guam to treat that program with preference for U.S. citizens first. So that would be my amendment, Madam Speaker.
So on the amendment, without any objections, so ordered.
Thank you very much, Madam
Motion
Speaker.
to,
And now I'd like to move it to third.
so on the motion to move it to third reading without any objections, so ordered. Thank you. Recognize the primary sponsor of Bill number 386. Recognize Vice Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I move that Bill 386, as substituted by the Committee on Public Safety, Law Enforcement, and Judiciary, be placed in third reading, and I ask for an opportunity to address.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I was disappointed to get the memo that we were only going to get to have one bill on this month's session. Inasmuch as I have 25 committee reports that are currently in the Committee of Rules, and I was having to make a decision on what bill I felt was the most important that needed to be addressed. And it was an easy decision. It was Bill 386. And I want to thank the good chairman of the Public Safety Committee for his expeditious hearing of this bill. I also want to thank the minority leader because last legislature, he educated me on I'm going to mispronounce it, Salvia Divinorum, because I usually try to think of it as divine saliva. And I just trying to figure out how, but it was very difficult. And then earlier this year, or actually a couple of months ago, I was made aware of the fact that this thing called spice was still being sold on island. And I started to ask around, and I asked Senator Bloss why that was. And again, he educated me on the fact that though he did, and we as a legislature did outlaw this thing called spice, and its scientific name that we included in the previous law, that these people that are involved in the drug trade are quite very ingenious. And as soon as we pass a law, they immediately figure out adding some different additive or a different insecticide or something or other to change the makeup of this drug, and all of a sudden they can go back on the shelves and they can advertise it as legal because it is not within it doesn't fit the scientific descriptions that we had in the previous law. I called the minority leader from the States and I discussed with him the fact that I saw the news story about the fact that we were having a problem with this at one of the local high schools, and asked if he would be willing to amend his legislation or if he would be have no objection to my allowing me to have my staff do the research to amend this law. And he was very gracious in saying that we could do the research and he would be more than willing to co-sponsor the legislation. So I want to thank him very much for allowing me to introduce this, because I think it's imperative that we as a community protect our children. This drug is more insidious than anything that I've seen. And Madam Speaker, I was around in the 60s and the early 70s and went to school in California, and I saw all the drugs that were being done then, but I have never seen a drug that would cause an adult to crumble to the floor, lose control of the bodily functions, and just do everything, having lost control of his bodily functions. That was completely shocking to me. And in discussions with Customs and Quarantine, and if you look at the testimony that Customs and Quarantine provided and also Public Health and Social Services, they think this is worse than LSD and anything else that we've seen in the past, say maybe for heroin in its addictiveness or ice. But the minority leader and I decided that we should amend this legislation and try to find a way to add a few other scientific or chemicals to the legislation. We had a very difficult time because we were able to find an article that said that there were 5 other things that we could add because his law only had 4. There were 5 more things that we were going to be able to add. And so the initial introduction of the bill added 5 new chemicals. When the good chairman of Public Safety conducted the hearing, there was discussion about the fact that there are several other chemicals that are out there that can and are being utilized to make this drug called spice, or commonly referred to as spice. And Public Health and Social Services thought that maybe there should be some kind of provision, a catch-all, that anything that includes any of these chemicals can and should be utilized. While right after the hearing was conducted, I was watching C-SPAN and watched as the House of Representatives passed H.R. 1254, in which they included all of the 17 or 18 chemicals that are now in the substituted version. I immediately instructed my staff to discuss with the chairman, Palacios, about the possibility of substituting the bill that was introduced and to completely substitute it with H.R. 1254, because I understood that that bill had been written by DEA and had included everything that was the current knowledge of this drug. And so I want to thank the chairman for substituting the bill. I want to thank the minority leader for his assistance and his graciousness in allowing me to introduce this and to take the lead on this. But both of us, and in fact all of us, have a commitment to protecting our children. And when I was asked what the one bill that I wanted to get through at this session, it was this SPICE bill, to make sure that I would not see another or hear another news story from any of the high school principals lamenting the fact that one of their students had suffered whatever reactions they've had to these drugs. And so I ask all of you, all my colleagues, to please join in protecting our children by passing Bill 386 unanimously. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Mr. Vice Speaker, on the motion, Senator Munya Barnes, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on Bill number 386-31 as introduced by the Vice Speaker and my brother from Barrigada, Senator Frank Blossom. I really want to thank them for continuing to make the difference. Madam Speaker, just a little history here. The Guam Uniform Controlled Substance Act was signed into law in 1995, and that was through Public Law 23-60, and that was the 23rd Guam Legislature. And though, Madam Speaker, that this was not the first statute on Guam which prohibited illegal drugs and their harmful effects, the measure of that passage was seen by all as a positive step forward. And since the adoption of the Uniform Controlled Substance Act, Madam Speaker, nearly every legislature since then has acknowledged the need to adapt to an illegal drug industry that is working overtime, and I say overtime, to circumvent our laws that exist today. The intent of Bill number 386-31, like the statute originally authored by my brother, is intended to prohibit the chemical compound of Salvia divinorum, and that's commonly known as SPICE. At the time, the Guam Uniform Controlled Substances Act was enacted, that SPICE, which is Salvia divinorum, and other certain synthetic cannabinoids were not listed. And however, based on recent reports and even from the Drug Enforcement Agency, this drug, they're considering this drug to classify it as a Schedule 1, and that's the equivalent to LSD, like the retiring speaker spoke about. Salvia, or SPICE, has been banned in at least 18 states in the United States and has been banned for military service members. It does have the potential to be extremely harmful and therefore pose an imminent hazard to public safety. I want to note that Dr. Sabang from the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse says that these drugs have a negative effects on our youth, and given that reality, we must impose stricter regulatory requirements on these substances. And I want to give you an example that I read about earlier, and I want to share with you, Madam Speaker, that in January of this year in Tucson, Arizona, a 22-year-old young man who had been a frequent user of this substance called salvia or SPICE, he had a violent outburst, and in that outburst, it ended the lives of 6 people, including a chief U.S. District Court judge and it also left 14 others seriously injured. This drug has been, or this substance has been described to produce a out-of-body experiences, existence in multiple reality and mind-altering change in perception. And that defendant, Mr. Logner, at age 22, under the influence of salvia, would do things that he would not normally do. And although currently we do not have the resources to enforce spice and salvia divinorum, additional resources will be needed to improve enforcement. Madam Speaker, I want to say that the future of our children, of our youth, our public health and safety should outweigh any additional expenses required for the enforcement of this bill. I am one to say that I'm honored to be here this afternoon to speak in support of these bills, and I really want to thank the Vice Speaker and Senator Frank Blas for really wanting to take the time to introduce this legislation and try to ask my colleagues, our colleagues, to pass this legislation so that we can safeguard and protect our children, and that we know that substances to this effect are very harmful, and as noted in I guess testing, it does have very, very, I say, damaging effects to the mind and to the body. And we need to protect our children, and we need to make that difference. So I want to say for the record, I too want to stand in support of this legislation and thank the both of them for introducing it into this body. Sainamasi.
You're very welcome, Senator. On the motion, Senator Frank Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, obviously I stand in full total support of Bill 386-31. And I want to thank the Vice Speaker, the good Senator from Pt.2, for giving me the honor to be able to co-sponsor this piece of legislation with him. He's a humble man, and he didn't take a whole more credit than I think that he should have. He did talk about the, I guess, the communication that he and I were having prior to the introduction of the bill. And what he didn't speak of is really his grave and his immediate concern. What he didn't say is that the communications were very frequent, and I think it was through the weekend and through the late in the evening. It was while he was off island, tending to other affairs, that he saw still the need, even thousands of miles away, to move on legislation that would help to close the gap, with regards to the, the substance. And so it was through his insistence, his diligence, and the hard work, because there had to be a lot of research, mind you, Madam Speaker, that needed to be put into the creation of this bill by his staff. That has culminated in this bill that is before us. Madam Speaker, one of the things that he should take pride in is that similar legislation is now just being drafted and actually considered on the national floor, on the House and Senate floor. So much so, and the reason why is even if you were to look at the different chemicals and the chemical compound and the makeup that we are addressing here, even the Drug Enforcement Administration really doesn't know the full and far-reaching and the devastating and the complete devastating effects that the combination of these chemicals can have on the body. You know, Madam Speaker, normally, you know, for the Drug Enforcement Administration and for any of those authorizing bodies or those bodies to be able to be confident with regards to knowing exactly the full effect of what these drugs are, they normally need about 4 to 5 years of studies to see the effects in this thing. This drug is so new, that's just within the last 2 years. So we, as a result of the legislation put forward by the good Vice Speaker, this is actually a step ahead, and it's preparing us for what we're trying to stave off what could possibly happen if this continued down the road, 5 years down the road. I want to liken this to the experiences that many of us seen and many years ago with regards to the ice epidemic. You know, when methamphetamine first hit the streets, a lot of us were concerned of the here and the now, of the effects that it had on those individuals that were using it. After about 4 or 5 years, we started to look at things called ice babies. You know, Madam Speaker, I dare to say that as a result of this legislation, and unfortunately, as a result of the use that had been occurring over the last couple of years, in our continuous attempt to be able to make this use of this substance illegal, is that there's going to be things. There's going to be this population called spice babies. I don't know what that's going to look like. Just based on our experience with regards to the other type of drugs, with regards to ice and cocaine and heroin, we've seen those effects. And so, in his humbleness, I want to again congratulate. I want to applaud the Vice Speaker. I want to thank the Vice Speaker for giving me the honor to work with him and the staff to be able to put this together. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my good sister from Chalampago in her support also of this legislation, and I'm asking humbly, very humbly, for my colleagues for their unanimous support towards support and passage of this bill. Thank you very much.
Very welcome, Senator. On the motion, is there anyone else who would like to speak? There being none, Vice Speaker, would you like to close?
I just want to thank the retiring speakers for their eloquent support of this legislation, and I ask for the unanimous support of my colleagues. With that, I move Bill 386 to the voting file.
Without any objections, so ordered. Thank you. Vice Speaker?
Madam Speaker, if I could also beg the indulgence of the body, notwithstanding the House rules, to move back to motions to make an amendment to a bill that has already been sent to the voting file.
And that, again, that motion without any objections, so ordered.
Then, Madam Speaker, since we are in motions, I'd like to move that Bill 384 be brought back to the second reading file so I can make a simple amendment.
Okay, on that motion without any objections. Okay, well, that's the first motion then.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so it is back on
We're in
384 is
motions.
back on second reading, so.
Thank
so,
you,
no,
Madam
I mean,
Speaker.
he moved to put it there, so it is, and now we're still in motions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at the beginning of the session, I spoke about the message from the governor on override, and we were able to get the veto message of the governor on Bill 241-31. And Madam Speaker, after reviewing the veto message, I would like to make a motion, notwithstanding the veto of the governor, that Bill 241-31 be placed in the voting file for the purpose of an override, and I'd like to just speak briefly on it.
Okay, so you may proceed then.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I've had the opportunity to review the message of the governor on his veto of Bill 241. And after considering carefully the veto and even the submitted language for additional legislation, I feel that it would be in the best interest of the recipients of Chamorro Land Trust property for this body to consider this override because of the nature and involved and what is happening with these individuals who have these unapproved maps at this time, and what is it preventing them from doing. You know, the governor wanted to do the tax refund and put them up because he wanted people to have a nice Christmas, start the new year out right. Well, Madam Speaker, we've had many, many, many recipients of Chamorro Land Trust property who have been trying to get approval of their maps in order for them to just access the basic necessities of life in the properties that they currently now have under lease, and that is water and power. And it is really disheartening that one land trust recipient who is a neighbor to another land trust recipient cannot, because the Department of Land Management refused to approve their maps, even though, and I know of this one very real instance, that two neighbors occupying both half-acre lots, properties are abutting each other. They hired the same surveyor to survey their property. The one neighbor took his map to the Chamorro Land Trust, submitted it, had it approved by the director, and I don't know the exact date when the Department of Land Management, but let's say it was June 2nd, took his map on June 2nd to get it approved at Land Management. It met all the requirements drawn by a professional land surveyor. It was approved. He went, took his lease, took his map, got water and power to his property. The neighbor who had the property map drawn by the same surveyor with the same standards got his map approved by the director of the Chamorro Land Trust, but he got it approved on June 5th because he did something else on the 3rd and the 4th. And on June 3rd, the Department of Land Management arbitrarily then made a decision: we're no longer going to approve any new land trust maps because the same subdivision in which both are located did not go through the Guam Land Use Review. That's all. So this guy on June 2nd gets his map approved. The guy on June 5th, Department of Land Management refuses. Drawn by the same standards, but it's because Land Management just decided that on June 3rd, all land trust property maps in which they were located in a subdivision that did not go through the land use review process are no longer deemed approvable. And they're located in the same. And this is what neighbors are facing out there. And so what this bill does, Madam Speaker, is it says that those property maps, it first says that those maps have to be approved by the Chamorro Land Trust Director. Then, if it's approved by the Chamorro Land Trust Director, then those maps have to go to Land Management. And Land Management still has to review those maps and make sure, and it's very clear in the law, it makes sure that after they're approved by the Chamorro Land Trust Director, then notwithstanding the provision of law for the properties of the Guam Land Use Commission review process, then these leased property maps prepared and signed by professional land surveyors, which have been approved by the administrator of the Chamorro Land Trust, which must be redrawn or updated to meet the mapping requirements, then submitted to the Department of Land Management for editing, final approval, and recordation, are exempt from the need to be part of the subdivision that went through the the Guam Land Use Review. So that's it. We're not saying that, the governor refers to them as sketch maps. In the term of art on surveying, when the maps are unapproved, that's how surveyors and land management itself refers to them. They refer to them as sketches. Until such time that they are approved and recorded, then they become plat maps or property maps in terms of terminology. But the fact that they call them a sketch doesn't mean that it's not drawn to the specifications required. And if they happen to be, then once they get to land management, they have to be redrawn to meet the recording requirements of maps. And so what this does is addresses that one issue at this time, Madam Speaker, so that these people can at least record these maps that meet all the requirements of recordation, that they are complete, they are accurate, they provide for easements, and so forth. So we are saying that let these people, let that neighbor who went in on June 5th have the same access to the basic necessities of utilities of life, water and power, as this neighbor who went in on June 2nd, because that June 3rd date is an arbitrary date by land management, having nothing to do whether or not the maps are accurate and correct and satisfy the recording requirements of land management. They do, they have to be. Now the governor pointed out that, well, what about future subdivisions? And you know what, Madam Speaker? We had that in our bill. But of course, a motion was made by a member of this body to take that out. I would have preferred that it stayed in, but this body decided to let that exemption pass. My preference is to still require then the future subdivisions. And with the governor's bill, I intend to then look at that and make that the subject of the new bill. So, Madam Speaker, all I'm saying is let's have a heart. Let's approve these maps, allow them to be approved, allow them to be recorded after meeting all of the requirements of the Department of Land Management, not exempting them from the requirements of accuracy, licensed surveyor work, abutments of easements. All of that still have to be part of the map and reflective of what is required for a map. What is, as it says, Madam Speaker, and I go back again, submitted to the Department of Land for editing, final approval, and recordation. And the only exemption is from the review of the Guam Land Use Commission, which is a review of the subdivision itself. Because that subdivision of the that map that was approved on July 2nd is part of the same subdivision that didn't undergo this of the guy on June 5th. So we exempted for this guy, but we didn't exempt it for that guy. We're not exempting a new subdivision, just that existing subdivision, of which both were drawn by the same surveyor meeting the same standards, but one can get his water and power, the other guy can't because of an arbitrary decision. And we will come back in this body and the committee in the consideration of the other elements that the governor exercised. But let's allow at least 1 or 2 families or 5 families or 10 families that can take upon the enactment of this, take that map, get it recorded, and maybe get water and power before the new year, because now they have an approved map, and that's the only thing holding them back. I plead with my colleagues, Madam Speaker, to think about our people out there who are living without this because of an arbitrary decision. And let's give them that ability to access that basic utilities of life. And any other requirements of law that are not encompassed in here, that are pointed out by the governor, we can do that and we can address that. But at least in this holiday season, have a heart. Let's allow this bill to pass through an override. Let's allow these people to take their maps, and then we will address the bigger issues with regards to Chamorro Land Trust properties that are not encompassed in any of the bills, and we'll continue to work on trying to ensure that we do what's right for the beneficiaries of the trust as well as the trust itself. So I plead with my colleagues, Madam Speaker, for their kind and generous consideration on this matter that I'm presenting to them and plead for their support. Thank you, and Sidusmasi.
So on the motion then to send Bill 241 to the third reading file without any objections, so ordered. Mr. Vice Speaker, on 384, right?
Yes, Madam Speaker. On Bill 384, I'd like to ask that we amend it by adding 4 co-sponsors, 4 main co-sponsors to the legislation. in this order: Senator Vicente Pangilinan, Aileen Yamashita, Sam Mabini, and Tina Rose Munya-Barnes.
Without any objections, so ordered. Thank you. So we've exhausted the list on the agenda, so we're going to recess. Oh, that's right, there's one more. No, so we're going to recess until, no, we need to allow, wait, we're going to take a brief recess. The legislature is back in session. We will recess until Thursday morning at 9 o'clock to vote. Okay, see you Thursday.